If you are considering a fundraising campaign for your school, your church, your sports team, or other nonprofit group, today we're going to cover the mistakes that we often see most groups make in fundraising. Some of these are quite obvious. Newbie groups will make them. Some of them you may not have considered, even if you're a pro fundraiser. Now, doing a few things in preparation beforehand can make a huge difference in your fundraiser. So let's go ahead and take a look at the top 7 mistakes fundraising groups make and what you can do to be more successful. Number 1, this is pretty straightforward. You probably do it now, maybe not. Having a definable goal or having an unrealistic fundraising goal. So many groups fail to establish a collective goal, and subsequently, they then fail to provide individual goals for each of their fundraisers. First, how much money do you need overall? If you are fundraising, for example, for a trip that's going to cost $10,000, you have 100 volunteers. That translates into each person having to raise $100 each. Now, if the profit from each sale yields a $10 benefit, that's 10 sales per student or per volunteer. Ask yourself, and more importantly, ask your volunteers, is that a realistic number? Do they feel confident that they can do that given their network of friends and family? Do you need to recruit more volunteers? If not, do you need to somehow increase your margins? Or do you need to find a more popular fundraising product? More on that later. Number 2 is not effectively communicating your goals to your donors. Now, it sounds like common sense, but are your students or your fundraisers effectively communicating why they are raising funds? Is it a trip? Is it new equipment? Every quote-unquote pitch that your fundraisers give should communicate not only what and the amount they need, but the why. And it should be delivered in a professional and, more importantly, a passionate manner. Don't forget, these days, all fundraisers out there are competing for people's dollars, and donors deserve nothing less than the whole story passionately presented to them. Talk to your fundraisers beforehand, have them do some practice presentations, listen to them, get them polished, get them excited, get them wanting to go out and have fun, and have a great fundraise. Number 3 is fixating on margins. A lot of groups ask us right up front, what is the margin in the first 3 minutes that we're speaking with them? Now, margins seemingly are perceived as the most important element in fundraising. And let's face it, margins are important, and a high margin is far better than a low margin. But margins are, in fact, secondary to several other factors. And we have found that perceived value is actually the single most important element in a successful fundraise, and that's well before margins. And I'll give you an example here. What if you were using dirt, soil that you dug up from the ground, as a fundraising sales tool? Now, your margins are 100%, didn't cost you anything, but because perceived value of your offer is low, your campaign will not be a success. Remember, a maximized fundraise is going to be a good blend of 3 things: donor perceived value, high margins, and quantity sold. Now, sometimes you can actually make more money having lower margins and making it up with increased demand and higher quantity sales. Number 4 kind of ties into the previous one, selling unpopular items. So you followed the above 3 suggestions, your campaign still failed. Why? What happened? Many fundraisers are launched on the faulty assumption that donors are going to give you money no matter what, just because they like you, no matter what you're selling. That may have been true a few years ago, but today you are literally in the most competitive fundraising arena ever. Your donors do need to see value. They do need to feel respected, and they do need to feel they made a good buying decision after the fact. And don't forget, you will probably have to return to them again next year. Are they going to have a bad taste in their mouth after what happened the year before? Don't get into items that no one wants, no one uses, and no one needs. It doesn't make sense. Number 5 is not enlisting enough volunteers. And don't forget, there are many centers where work is going to be required beyond the actual fundraising initiatives themselves. Essentially, you're going to need to coordinate the sales literature, who's taking care of that, the fundraising initiatives, who's taking care of that, the collection of money, the distribution of the products you sell. Is the company you're buying them from coordinating that somehow, or do you have to take care of it? Are your donors able to submit orders online? And will fulfillment be handled by the company or be handled by your volunteers on a case-by-case basis. While having the product sent to the donor can make things easy for you, there's often fees associated with that will take away, once again, from your margins. So sometimes it can be better to prepare your volunteers to not only be ready to fundraise, but also to be able to distribute the product sold once the campaign concludes. Now, if donors are mostly family and friends, and if the expected donations are under 10 or less, in the single digits, once they're over, you should probably be okay doing it within your own circle. Over 10, you may need additional help with distribution. Now, make sure your volunteers aren't spread too thin or feeling that they're overworked, or they might not be there for you next year. Make sure you have enough people to be effective. Number 6 is overlooking hidden costs. At the end of the day, high margins, again, they're great, but what is actually going into your pocket? Is the fundraising company charging you fees such as shipping? Did you ask? Are there any applicable taxes that you will have to pay? Are the order forms included, or will you have to print those out yourself or make provisions to do something in that regard? Can you request changes to these forms? And if so, is there a fee? Make sure to have the company specify all the hidden costs, put it in writing, so you can then estimate exactly what your overall expenses are going to be, and that's going to help you with a final total that is ultimately going into your organization's coffers. Number 7, I'll call media blackout. And you know, the media loves to cover local fundraising events. It's a great story, but so many people don't even bother to make contact with their local media. Make sure to call your local media, try and arrange some FaceTime, or at least have them mention the upcoming fundraise. You know, writing a press release as well can really make a difference, make it look a whole lot more professional, and be sure to add attention-catching details relating to local stuff and relating to what you're doing to attract the journalist's attention. Now, if you aren't great at writing press releases, you can find reasonably priced writers on websites like Fiverr.com. Now, believe it or not, people who initially heard about your fundraise prior to you coming to the door or reaching out to them in the news are more likely to donate than someone who did not. So don't forget to take advantage of this totally free publicity. I hope those 7 mistakes help. For more fundraising tips, tricks, and news, press like and subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to learn more about our unique fundraising power program and how we help groups raise significant funds, you can visit us at fundraisingpower.org. Thanks for watching.